when you get these kinds of egos together, and especially egos that don't really have any idea of the jobs that they've been put into, incompetence way in over their heads, they're going to butt heads. And they are right now. Actually, I just thought of that, buttheads. That's exactly what they are. And so, yes, there's this tension right there.
Do you think there's tensions between Trump and Hegseth? Because I'm detecting early signs of that. And do you think Trump has just got bored of the whole Ukraine-Russia thing and just wants to walk away?
Oh, absolutely. He's been bored of this since before he became president. After he became president, he really got bored because he had to deal with it. Is there tension between him and Hegseth? Yes, just the same as there is between him and Tulsi Gabbard and now Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, because when you get these kinds of egos together, and especially egos that don't really have any idea of the jobs that they've been put into, incompetence way in over their heads, they're going to butt heads. And they are right now. Actually, I just thought of that, buttheads. That's exactly what they are. And so, yes, there's this tension right there. Does that mean Hegseth's going to go? I don't think so, because he serves a purpose, as does Pam Bondi, as does Kash Patel, as does Bondino, and all the rest of them. They're useful idiots, and they will and are doing everything that Donald Trump wants. Why would he replace them, whether or not he thinks that they're an idiot, and possibly put in someone that, God forbid, would actually do their job and was competent? He can't take that step. He can't take a chance on that.
No, I remember the attack that there was on Zelensky in the Oval Office by Pete Hegseth, and then Donald Trump taking over, and Donald Trump saying to Zelensky that he had no cards to play, and Zelensky must have known that Operation Spider's Web, that very audacious drone attack on the strategic bombers and all the rest of it, wasn't just a massive set of cards that he had to play. It was ones that would trump anything that was out there, and he must have, whilst he was being attacked, had a wry smile on his face inside.
Well, I said it then and I'll say it now. I don't know how Zelensky kept his temper. I mean, I do understand why, of course, he had to. But yeah, I mean, he did know this, I'm sure. He meets with his intelligence people and military every day, all night. And Trump is, I'm sorry to say it, a moron. He doesn't understand tactics or strategy or military or history. So, of course, Zelensky has cards to play. And Putin's cards to play were diminishing even then. But Trump didn't know it, and if he did know it, he didn't care. So, of course, that's a whole other story, that meeting in the Oval Office. But Zelensky does have cards to play. In fact, he's showing his cards more every day. And I think the Western pundits and leaders and the Trumps of the world are going to continue to be surprised at what Ukraine is doing to Russia.
Oh, even as from a knowledgeable commentator on it, I have a wry smile when I see the latest tactic that comes out. But the impact is quite clear in Russia. As you said, they're losing over 1,000 troops a day, but they're now relying on North Korea for basic ammunition, artillery ammunition, small arms ammunition, artillery guns, rockets, and all the rest of it. And now we hear potentially another 30,000 troops. We hear of China having to supply more electronic components and getting more involved. And then the Chinese saying they can't afford to they won't let Russia lose. Should we be concerned about the further internationalization of this conflict?
Well, of course. I mean, what it says about the Russians accepting or possibly accepting 30,000 more North Korean troops doesn't really mean that the Russians don't have the manpower. They do. It says two things to me. One is that Kim Jong-un doesn't give a damn about his people either, and is perfectly willing to throw 30 or 300,000 North Korean soldiers into the meat grinder and kill them. But it doesn't mean that Putin doesn't have more resources. What he is doing, what he's not doing actually, is calling up having a general conscription. He won't do that. He can't do that, because that's when the Russian mothers would start to scream to the holy heavens. The only reason, one of the many reasons that Russians haven't risen up yet against Putin is because their sons, their husbands have not been drafted yet, conscripted into this horrible tragedy. He's been taking people from the Far Eastern provinces, who used to be independent nations, where the people are, for the most part, more uneducated, poorer, and are less likely to protest to Putin about sending their families over to Ukraine. But when he starts a general conscription and families of the middle class, or God forbid, the upper class from Moscow, St. Petersburg, Vladivostok, Nizhny Novgorod, and so forth and so on, when they are drafted and sent to Ukraine, that is when there's going to be a problem. And he will do anything possible to not have to do that. As far as international intervention, China doesn't want Russia to lose, because then America is going to concentrate on them. With our weapons, with our economy. We can not worry about Europe or Ukraine. We can then laser focus on China, and they can't have any of that. They're just happy as a dog with two tails that we have our attention split between Europe and China, and they want to continue that.
Yeah, well, interesting. Looking at everything that you've said and what's gone on in the last sort of week or so, do you think either side has got the strategic momentum to make a difference in the Russia-Ukraine war? And do you think that we are on a potential path for a wider global conflict, looking at what's happening in the Middle East, and as you mentioned, that the influence of China?
Well, as far as the Ukraine-Russia war, right now, no one has strategic advantage. But all Ukraine needs, and they've been shouting this since February of 2022, all they need are the weapons and ammunition. Then they will have the strategic advantage. If they had been supplied with the weapons and ammunition and training that they have been asking for 3.5 years, you and I would not be having this discussion. Russia would be defeated. They would have been defeated. No question about it. And no, there wouldn't have been World War III. And this discussion would be moot. It wouldn't be possible, or wouldn't have to be had at all. The second part of your question, I forget, if you could.
Do you think we're on a potential path to a global conflict?
Well, you mentioned the Middle East, and that's certainly a global conflict. We didn't really get into the bombing of Iran. And that's not over. As I know you followed, and most of your audience has probably followed, the bombing of Iran by American forces was not the obliteration of Iran's nuclear capability that Donald Trump said within 24 hours. Most of I don't know this for a fact, but I think you'd have to be an imbecile or possibly an occupant of the West Wing of the White House not to know that the Ukrainians moved a lot of their enriched uranium before the bombing took place. So even if the sites, the laboratories, and the mines were obliterated, it wouldn't really matter, because it doesn't take that long to build alternative facilities if you already have the enriched uranium and the scientists which to work with them, which I believe is the case. And do you think that Iran is just going to forget this and say, oh, well, it's just, it's no big thing? No, they're not. They're going to wait until they're in a little better position. And Russia is going to help them, by the way, and they're going to redouble their efforts at making a nuclear weapon and attacking the West through their proxies. So, as the man once said, this ain't over.
I think you said Ukrainians instead of Iranians. I do that frequently as well, talking Richmond. But we all know what you meant. But David, like you, I wish we didn't have the circumstances for you and I to have to sit down and debate this. But I fear that. I will have the pleasure of having you back on as a guest at some stage in the future, because this isn't going to go away. David, many thanks for chatting to me today on Frontline.
Enjoyed it, Philip. Thank you very much.
You've been watching Frontline with me, Philip Ingram. If you'd like access to exclusive content, please subscribe to Times Radio membership and watch us on YouTube. But you can now get us as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. And don't forget, you can also listen to Times Radio for the latest updates on global affairs and read about them at thetimes.com. Thank you.